Hi readers, welcome back to my channel, Lila Wanders and Reads, and welcome to, I'm mixing it up this year. Today is not my weekend books, that's going to be interesting. I'll post that tomorrow. Today is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, 27th of January, and in the description box I'm going to put links to the Holocaust Museum site and their bookshop. You can buy any of these books there. And I will also include a link to the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust, which is a site in the UK, but specifically I'm going to put a link to their page on the 10 Stages of Genocide. But let's get to the books now, shall we? I've collected these books. If you've watched my channel for a while, you know I'm a big World War II buff and World War I buff, but I've got more books about World War II. And so I wanted to focus on books for sale or recommended by the Holocaust Museum because a lot of particularly fiction books can be somewhat problematic in that sometimes they sacrifice historical fact for the sake of the story, and or sometimes their facts are not accurate. Anywho, so all these are for sale on the Holocaust, I can't pronounce today, sorry, Museum website. And let's start with, this is a fairly new release. I picked this up last year. It's Cold Crematorium, Reporting from the Land of Auschwitz by Joseph Debrazini? Sorry, I can't pronounce today. Did I mention that? The author arrived in Auschwitz in 1944. Had he been selected to go left, his life expectancy would have been approximately 45 minutes. One of the lucky ones, he was sent to the right, which led to 12 horrifying months of slave labor in a series of camps ending in the Cold Crematorium, the so-called hospital of the Camp Dornhau, where prisoners too weak to work awaited execution. But as Soviet and Allied troops closed in, local Nazi commanders, anxious about the possible consequences of outright murder, decided to leave the remaining prisoners to die in droves rather than send them directly to the gas chambers. The author records his experiences in this book, described by a commentator as one of the harshest, most merciless indictments of Nazism ever written. This was first published, I did not know this, in Hungarian in 1950, was never translated into a world language due to McCarthyism, Cold War hostilities, and anti-Semitism. More than 70 years later, this masterpiece that was nearly lost to time will be available in 15 languages. I am going to bump this up in my reading. I did not realize all of that. So, I'm going to get to that. My January TBR is quite full. I'm going to try for February. Next up is a classic and written by a winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. That is Night by Elie Wiesel. I have had this a long time and apparently still have not read this because there's a sticker on it that now won't come off. Born in the town of Szeged, Transylvania, Elie Wiesel was a teenager when he and his family were taken from their home in 1944 to the Auschwitz concentration camp and then to Buchenwald. Night is a terrifying record of Elie Wiesel's memories of the death of his family, the death of his own innocence, and his despair as a deeply observant Jew confronting the absolute evil of man. This new translation by his wife and most frequent translator, Marianne Wiesel, corrects important details and presents the most accurate rendering in English of Elie Wiesel's testimony to what happened in the camps and of his unforgettable message that this horror must never be able to happen again. Never be allowed to happen again. This is copyright 1972. This translation was published in 2006. And I have had it, obviously, close to 20 years. It's another one I want to bump up. Next up, So one of the things that I did in my working is I took some online classes from the out of the World War II Museum down in New Orleans. They were online, and so a lot of these books I got from there. Some of these books I got. Cold Crematorium, this next one, and the two that follow I got because of those classes. Have not read any of these yet. But Primo Levi's Survival in Auschwitz, a memoir. This version includes an afterword with Primo Levi. I'm going to slow down. Including an afterword, Primo Levi and Philip Roth, a conversation. In 1943, Primo Levi? I'm not sure. A 25-year-old chemist and Italian citizen of Jewish race was arrested by Italian fascists and deported from his native Turin to Auschwitz. Survival in Auschwitz is Levi's classic account of his 10 months in the German death camp, a harrowing story of systematic cruelty and miraculous endurance. Remarkable for its simplicity, restraint, compassion, and even wit, this book remains a lasting testament to the indestructibility of the human spirit. Now I need to get to some Philip Roth, too. I have a book by him that I really want to read soon. These next two are also diaries. In fact, the whole first of these are diaries, and the last two that I'm going to mention are fiction-ish. This by Victor Klemperer, I Will Bear Witness, 1933 to 1941, a diary of the Nazi years, and 1942 to 1945. I really would love to read this sooner rather than later. March 10th, 1933. January 30th, Hitler, Chancellor. What, up to election, I called terror was a mild prelude. On Saturday, I heard a part of Hitler's speech from Königsberg. The front of the hotel at the railway station illuminated, a torchlight procession. I understood only occasional words, but the tone, the unctuous bawling, truly bawling, of a priest. Struggling to complete his ambitious history of 18th century France, Victor Klemperer loses his professorship, then his car, his phone, his house, even his typewriter under the ever-tightening Nazi grip. Not since the diary of Anne Frank has a secret journal burst into the scene with such mesmerizing urgency. I Will Bear Witness is a testament of rare eloquence and humanity by the most astute witness to ever emerge from Hitler's Germany. It is a work of literature as well as a revelation of the day-by-day terror of the Nazi years. Only downside of this is that the type is very, very small, so I'm going to have to pull out my readers on this. This was published in this translation, preface, and notes copyright 1998 by Martin Chalmers. Some of this on the back of this one is going to be the same. Having lost his job, his car, his cat, and his home under the proliferating Nazi regulations, Victor Klemperer vows to record every act of kindness and cruelty he witnesses in the closed world of the Jew's house to which he has been banished, and outside on the streets of Dresden where the first deportations have begun. In this, we hear the voices of Hitler and Goebbels railing from loudspeakers, eavesdrop on conversations about the progress of the war, and are drawn into the resilient, cantankerous intimacy of Klemperer's marriage, which sustains him throughout the relentless shattering of his world. No animal can be so hounded, he writes, so timid. A surprising agile student of human nature, Klemperer was a writer of outsized talents. His diaries are a monumental contribution to world history. Again with the small print, again with the translation copyright 1999. But the discussion guide is copyright 2001. Where's the discussion guide? I didn't know there was a discussion guide. I don't see. Oh, there it is at the very end. Interesting. It may take a little longer to get to these two because they are long. However, I am really interested in the 1933 to 1941 days. Next up is a children's book. I actually believe I've read this, but I did not have a copy, so I ended up picking this up somewhere recently-ish. That is Lois Lowry's Number the Stars. I cannot read what that award is because I don't have my glasses with me. They're out there somewhere running around. How brave are you, little Anne-Marie? It is 1943. And for Anne-Marie Johansen, life in Copenhagen is a complicated mix of ordinary home and school time, food shortages, and the constant presence of Nazi soldiers. Bravery seems a vague virtue, one possessed by dragon-slaying knights in the bedtime stories she tells her younger sister, Kirsty. As the German troops begin their campaign to relocate all the Jews of Denmark, the Johansens take in Anne-Marie's best friend, Ellen Rosen, and pretend she is part of the family. The girls live like sisters until it becomes clear something more needs to be done to save Ellen, her family, and the Jews of Denmark. In this tale of an entire nation's heroism, the story of the Danish resistance and their plan to smuggle the entire Jewish population of Denmark, nearly 7,000 people, across the sea to Sweden, is told with pride and hope through one young girl's eyes. I think I read this. I read a lot of Lois Lowry growing up. I don't remember because it's been decades. But I might have to reread this. This looks fascinating because the Danish resistance wanting to smuggle an entire Jewish population was not on my radar. I had not remembered that. But of course, when I read it decades ago, I would have been a lot younger, so my takeaway would have been different. Next up, I struggled on whether to include this or not because I know that there was a great deal of criticism about the film, and I think that I did not do a deep dive on it, but I think a lot of it stemmed from like glossing over some things and making it appear that the Jewish people weren't, had no agency. They were just sheep being led by somebody. However, I did find the American version of this on the Holocaust Museum website. That book, I bought a British edition of this because it was the 1982 Booker Prize winner. And so this is going to be part of my Booker Prize project. It will be months before I get to this book because I'm doing those books in a specific order. This is Schindler's Ark by Thomas Keneally. You know it in America as Schindler's List. I wanted the original title for my Booker Prize project, so I ordered it from blackwells.com. Jokes aside, Oscar, my dear fellow, you'd be a fool if you got a real taste for some little Jewish skirt. They don't have a future, Oscar. That's not old-fashioned Jew hate talking, I assure you. It's policy. As thousands face death in Nazi-occupied Poland, an unlikely savior materialized in the shadow of Auschwitz. Oskar Schindler was a heavy-drinking, womanizing German industrialist whom the war transformed into a man with a mission. This is an incredible story of huge risks and enormous gains as Schindler defied and outwitted the SS to protect the beleaguered Jews who worked for him. I look forward to reading this. I'm going to just do a little aside here. I'll tell you more about this in my week in books. I have DNF'd 3 books in a row, and now I'm reading something light, but I think that doing the Booker Prize project has changed my reading experience and what I enjoy. So I did struggle through a couple of the Booker books, but I persisted, and I seem to enjoy them as a whole more than I have enjoyed some more modern books. The more modern popular fiction, and I hate to use that term, anything can be popular, but I do look forward to reading Schindler's Ark when I get to that in my Booker project. And again, I'll talk more about my feelings about Booker books versus modern books. Not that Booker books aren't modern, but some of the more modern books, more recent books that I've read. Finally, I wanted to end with this book because I read this book in college 8 million years ago. And this book I've read and reread several times. It really affected me when I was in college. I wrote papers about it. I also wrote papers about it for some other people. And that is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. I have 3 copies, 2 of this book, and then 1 Man's Search for Ultimate Meaning, which I think is the same book, under a different title, not 100%. I loved this book so much. Now, this is a book in 2 parts. Experiences in a concentration camp, and then, well, there's 3 parts, actually. Then he writes about logotherapy in a nutshell, which is a form of therapy he, I guess, created. So that part was less interesting to me. And then in this version, there's a postscript 1984, The Case for a Tragic Optimism, based on a lecture he presented at the 3rd Congress of Logotherapy in June 1983. I still love this book, and let me tell you about it. I recommend reading this book once in your life at least. Internationally renowned psychiatrist Viktor E. Frankl endured years of unspeakable horror in Nazi death camps. During, and partly because of his suffering, Dr. Frankl developed a revolutionary approach to psychotherapy known as logotherapy. At the core of his theory is the belief that man's primary motivational force is his search for meaning. And in the end, I don't want to spoil too much. He comes to a conclusion that, again, I don't want to spoil it. I think it's best that you read it for yourself. This book really affected me. And over on YouTube, well, this is on YouTube, right? In the comments several weeks ago, someone asked that I do my favorite books of all time on shorts. And naturally, when they said that, I went blank. I was like, I don't have a favorite book. But I do. And I think when I think about it, I've been thinking about it ever since, this would have to be one of those favorite books of a lifetime. I get favorite books for a year or favorite books for a month, but this one has never left me. I highly recommend it. So, I'm not sure how long this was. I just babbled on. I've had Brad pronunciation, and I think it's because I try to talk too fast and my brain goes faster than my mouth can. Anywho, today is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and again, I've put links to everything down in the description box below. I hope that you'll take time to seek out some books about the Holocaust, or there are resources in the website links that I've shared with you where you can seek out information online. You can listen to people's testimonies or read their words. It is very, very good, very powerful, and we should never forget that, lest it happen again. That is it for me. Thank you so much for sticking with me on my journey. I'll be back tomorrow for my weekend books. Happy reading.